The last words I heard from my son, Jose, were, "You'll burn for this, you old fool." And before I could even react, the flames began to lick at my feet. His face, twisted with hate, was the last thing I saw before the smoke swallowed me whole. My name is Miriam Davis, and I'm 68 years old. That night, lying on the floor, choking on smoke, I couldn't understand how my life had come to this. How the boy I'd raised, the one I'd taught to ride a bike and helped with his homework, could look at me with such venom. I've always been a proud woman, independent. I raised Jose mostly on my own after my husband, George, passed away far too young. I worked as a charge nurse at the hospital for 35 years. I poured everything I had into that boy. I made sure he had good clothes, a good education, and more opportunities than I ever did. And he was a good boy. I have to believe that. I remember the boy who brought me wildflowers from the neighbor's yard, and the young man who walked me to my car after my late shifts. He was my boy. Then, 3 years ago, he married Vivian. A mother knows. You can call it intuition, or maybe you'd call it jealousy, but I call it seeing what's right in front of my face. I never trusted her. She had a way of smiling at you that never quite reached her eyes. She was all sugar on the outside, but underneath, she was cold, hard, and calculating. She would compliment my home, this small but comfortable house in Austin I've lived in for 40 years. "Oh, Miriam," she'd say, "this neighborhood is just so charming. The property values must be through the roof." She wasn't being kind. She was appraising it. Slowly, Jose began to change. The son who used to call me every Sunday just to chat now only called when he, or more often, they needed something. The distance started small. He was too busy for our regular dinners. He forgot my birthday until 3 days later when a generic flower bouquet arrived, when I knew Vivian had ordered. Then the conversations, when they did happen, all circled back to one thing: money. About a month ago, they came over for dinner. I'd made his favorite, a pot roast, just the way he liked it. He barely touched it. Vivian did most of the talking. "Miriam," she said, swirling her wine glass, "we've been looking at the market in Austin. It's just incredible. You're sitting on an absolute gold mine here." I just smiled and set my fork down. "It's not a gold mine, dear. It's my home. It's where I raised my son." Vivian let out a little laugh, like I'd told a silly joke. Of course. But think of the burden this big house must be. The upkeep, the taxes. We worry about you all alone here." I looked at Jose, hoping he would say something, hoping he would defend me or our home or our memories. He just stared at his plate, pushing a potato around with his fork. "We're just saying," Jose finally chimed in, his voice quiet, "it's a lot of house for one person. You could sell it. Move into one of those nice, new, active living apartments. You'd have a pool, activities, and we could use the equity to invest." Invest. That was their new word for give us. "I'm not leaving my home," I said, and my voice was firmer than I intended. "This house is all I have left of your father. It's not for sale." Vivian's smile tightened. Jose's face hardened. The rest of the dinner was quiet, cold, and awful. This house, it's not a gold mine. It's where I brought Jose home from the hospital, wrapped in a blue blanket. It's where George and I danced in the kitchen to an old record player. Every nick in the floorboards, every scratch on the doorframe where I marked Jose's height is a memory. And they saw it as a paycheck. I was no longer Mom. I was an obstacle. I was the old fool who wouldn't sign the papers. I didn't realize how much of an obstacle I was until that night. The night it all happened. The night my refusal to give them my home turned their greed into something monstrous. It turned into the smell of gasoline and the click of a lock. It turned into my own son, my child, holding a match ready to burn me alive just to get his hands on my house. When I think back, what hurts the most isn't the fire. It's the memories. It's remembering the good times and knowing they were real, at least they were real to me. And then wondering, when did they stop being real for him? I remember Jose's high school graduation like it was yesterday. He was valedictorian. My boy, up on that stage in his blue gown, talking about the future. I was sitting in the third row, just bawling my eyes out. And when he finished his speech, the first person he looked for, the first person he hugged when he came off that stage, was me. He wrapped his arms around me and said, "We did it, Mom." Not, "I did it." We did it. That was my Jose. That was the boy who'd hold my hand in the grocery store long after other boys were too embarrassed. I had such hopes for him. He was smart, he got a good job in tech, and I was so proud. I thought my heart would burst. And then he brought Vivian home. The first time I met her, it was at a nice restaurant downtown. She was polished. That's the word for it. Perfect hair, perfect nails. A dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She shook my hand, and her grip was firm, but her hand was cold as ice. "It is so wonderful to finally meet you, Miriam," she'd said, smiling that smile that didn't move her eyes. "Jose has told me so much about you." All through dinner, she talked about their plans, their trips, the condo they were looking at. And she'd ask me questions that felt less like questions and more like evaluations. "So, you were a nurse? That must have been very demanding. And you've lived in the same house all this time? How quaint." I tried. I really did. For Jose's sake. When they got married, I gave them a significant amount of money from my savings to help with a down payment. A wedding gift. I called it. "We appreciate it, Mom," Jose had said, giving me a quick, one-armed hug. Vivian had just smiled and said, "That's a very good start for us." That was the first real sign. The good start. Not a, "Thank you," not a, "That's too generous." A start. After that, the subtle changes began. Jose stopped calling just to talk. Our conversations always had a purpose, a need. It started with small things. "Mom, Viv and I are a little short for the car payment this month. Could you spot us?" Then it grew. "Mom, we found this incredible investment opportunity, but we need to put up $10,000 by Friday. We'll pay you back double, promise." I never saw a dime of it back. I knew what was happening. I wasn't a fool, but I was a mother. I remembered the boy on the graduation stage. I remembered the little hand in mine. I thought, he's just stressed. He's trying to build a life. He's trying to keep up with her. Vivian's influence was like a slow-acting poison. She started making comments about my house every time she came over. She'd walk through the living room, touching things. "You know, Miriam," she said one Sunday, running a painted fingernail over my good china cabinet, "these older homes are lovely, but the layouts are just so closed off. If this were our house, we'd tear down this wall, make an open concept." Another time, she stood in the kitchen. "I just don't know how you cook in here. It's so tiny. And these old appliances. Honestly, this whole place is a tear down." Jose, who used to love my kitchen, who used to sit at the table doing his homework while I cooked, just stood there. He said nothing. I started to feel the walls closing in. My own son, my Jose, his bitterness started to seep out. If I said I couldn't help them with money one month, his voice would get cold. "Fine. I just thought you'd want to support your son. Vivian is very disappointed. She's trying so hard to build a future for us." I was being alienated in my own home. I was becoming the problem, the roadblock to their future. I was the old woman sitting on a gold mine that they deserved. I became wary of Vivian's coldness, her constant, sweet-voiced manipulations. And I'll tell you what so many of you are probably thinking. Why did you let it happen? Why didn't you cut them off? Why didn't you put your foot down? I saw the signs. I saw the coldness in his eyes. I saw the greed in hers, but I kept holding on. I held on to the hope that this wasn't really him, that this was her, that if I just loved him enough, if I was just patient enough, the son I knew, the one who hugged me on that stage, would come back. That was my mistake. I believed that a mother's love could fix anything. I didn't realize that some things aren't broken. They're just gone. And my hope, that blinding, foolish hope, is what almost got me killed. The night it happened started like any other Tuesday. I was in my armchair, reading a novel with a half-empty cup of herbal tea on the coaster beside me. The house was quiet. It was just past 9 o'clock. Then, headlights swept across my living room curtains. A car door slammed, then another. I hadn't been expecting anyone. I set my book down just as the doorbell rang, sharp and impatient. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Jose and Vivian. My hand faltered on the doorknob. They never just dropped by. I opened the door. Jose, Vivian, is something wrong? Vivian pushed past me into the entryway. She wasn't smiling. We need to talk, Miriam. Seriously this time. Jose followed her in. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the wall over my shoulder, his jaw tight. What is this about? I asked, closing the door. It's about the house, Mom, Jose said, his voice flat and cold. We've been patient. We've tried to make you see reason. Reason? I said, my patience wearing thin. We talked about this. I'm not selling my home. It's not just a home, Miriam. Vivian snapped, spinning around to face me. Her voice was high and sharp. It's an asset, a massive 6-figure asset that you are hoarding. We have plans. We have a life we're trying to build. And what about my life? I said, my own voice rising. This is my house. I worked my whole life for it. Your father and I. We don't care about Dad, Jose shouted, and the word hit me like a slap. He had never, ever spoken of his father that way. He's gone, Mom. He's been gone for 20 years. You're living in the past. We found a buyer, a cash offer. We need you to sign the papers. He threw a manila envelope onto the coffee table. I looked at the envelope, then back at his face. The boy I knew was completely gone. This was a stranger. Get out of my house. What did you say? Vivian hissed. I said, get out. Both of you. The answer is no. It will always be no. Vivian looked at Jose. Jose, don't just stand there. Do something. Jose looked at me, and his eyes, they were empty. We're not leaving without those signatures, Mom. You'll have to kill me first, I said. It was just a phrase. A dramatic, angry thing to say. I never imagined he'd take it as a suggestion. He moved so fast. He grabbed my arms. I cried out more in shock than pain. He was strong, so much stronger than I was. He wasn't my boy. He was a man, and he was dragging me. Jose, what are you doing? Let go of me. He dragged me down the hall to my bedroom. I tried to brace my feet, but the rug just slid. He shoved me inside. I fell hard, and my hip hit the edge of the bed frame. I cried out as the pain shot up my side. You should have just signed the papers, you old fool, he said. Jose, please. I heard Vivian's voice from the hallway. Lock it. Lock the door. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the doorknob, but it was too late. I heard the click of the key turning in the lock. I was trapped. I banged on the door. Jose, let me out. This isn't funny. Let me out. And then I smelled it. It wasn't a burning smell. It was sharp chemical. Gasoline. My blood ran cold. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Jose. I screamed, banging with both fists. Vivian. No. No, please. I heard a clatter on the hardwood floor outside. And then a whoosh. A line of orange light appeared under the door, bright and terrible. Smoke, acrid and black, began to pour in through the crack. I backed away, coughing. My mind just stopped. This isn't real. This isn't happening. My son. But the smoke was real. The heat was real. I started to panic, to scream, but then something else took over. I was a nurse for 35 years. I've seen things. I've run codes. I've handled life and death. You don't panic. You think. My father's voice, clear as a bell, echoed in my head from 50 years ago. He was a fireman. He once told me, "Miriam, fire is a scary thing, but you remember, fire only destroys what's useless." I am not useless. I am not going to die. My eyes darted around the room, which was already hazy with smoke. The fire was roaring on the other side of the door. The wood was starting to crackle. I knew what they wanted. The house, yes, but they thought with me gone. And no will, Jose would inherit it all. They were wrong. I coughed, my lungs burning. I dropped to the floor, where the air was clearer. I crawled to my closet. My hip was screaming in protest, but I ignored it. Under the loose floorboard, beneath my winter sweaters, was a small, fireproof metal box. My husband, George, had insisted we get it. For the important things, he'd said, inside was my will, the original deed to the house, in my name, and other documents, things that would prove everything. My hands were shaking, but I pulled up the board. I grabbed the box. It was small but heavy. I didn't have anywhere to put it. I looked at my thin nightgown. I ripped my robe off, shoved the hot metal box against my stomach, and tied the robe tightly around my waist, holding it in place like a girdle. It seared my skin, but I didn't care. Just as I tied the last knot, I heard them through the roar of the flames. Vivian's voice, high and panicked. "Jose, oh my God! Is it done? Are you sure?" And my son's reply, cold and final. "It's done. She won't be a problem anymore. Let's go. We'll get the call in an hour. We'll come back, play the grieving son. It's all taken care of." I heard footsteps running down the hall. The front door slammed. They were gone. They had left me here to burn. The smoke was so thick I couldn't see the ceiling. The door was buckling. I crawled, dragging my bad hip, toward the window. My father's words were still in my head. Fire only destroys what's useless. I am not useless. I am not a victim. I am a mother, and I will survive. This is not my end. This is the beginning. I crawled to the window, dragging my bad hip. The glass was hot to the touch, and the room was so black with smoke I couldn't see my own hands. My lungs felt like they were full of hot gravel. I fumbled with the old lock, my fingers slipping. The heat from the door was scorching my back, and I knew I had seconds. I finally got the latch undone and shoved the window up. It screeched in protest and only went halfway. It was enough. I pushed my head out, gasping for the clean, cold night air. It felt like breathing for the first time in my life. I didn't have time to be gentle. I pushed my shoulders through. The metal box tied to my stomach scraped hard against the sill, but I didn't care. I let myself fall, tumbling out of the window and onto the azalea bushes I'd planted with George 30 years ago. I rolled onto the wet grass, coughing, hacking up black phlegm. My nightgown was singed, my hair felt brittle, and my skin was screaming. But I was alive. I was breathing. I lay there for a moment, just staring up at the smoke pouring out of my bedroom. My house. My home. The flames were licking out of the window I'd just escaped from. Then I heard the shouting. "Miriam! My God! Are you all right?" It was my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, running across his lawn in his bathrobe, his face pale with shock. "Call 911, someone else yelled. I already did. In the distance, the sirens were already wailing. They were close. The fire department here is fast. I just lay there, clutching the box through the robe, my mind racing. And then a thought, cold and clear, cut through the panic. What do I say? A paramedic was kneeling over me in what felt like seconds. Ma'am, are you okay? My name is Tom. Can you tell me what happened? A firefighter was right behind him. Ma'am, did you see how it started? Was anyone else inside? This was it. This was the moment. I could tell them the truth. My son did this. He tried to kill me. And what would happen? They'd look at me, an old woman, confused, smoke in my lungs, babbling about her own son. They'd call Jose. He and Vivian would rush over, all concern and tears. They would say I was confused, that my mind was going. They would look at each other sadly and say, we've been so worried about her. She's been forgetting things. And the box, the evidence, it would be taken away, put in a locker somewhere, or worse, given to Jose, my next of kin, for safekeeping. No, I couldn't let that happen. I started to cough, a deep, rattling cough. It wasn't hard to fake. I don't know, I rasped, letting my voice shake. I was reading in my chair, the old lamp. I looked at the firefighter. My lamp. It's very old. It must have sparked. It was an accident. It all happened so fast. The firefighter and the paramedic looked at each other. An electrical fire, the firefighter asked. I let the tears come. They weren't fake tears. I was crying for my life, for my son, for my home. I think so. I whispered. I'm so confused. Is my house? We're doing everything we can, ma'am, he said, his voice gentle. Let's get you to the hospital. They were lifting me onto a stretcher, wrapping me in a scratchy blanket. My neighbors were all watching, whispering. I felt like a spectacle. And that's when I saw his car. Jose's black sedan screeched to a halt down the street. He jumped out, but he didn't just run. He stumbled like he was overcome with shock. It was a perfect performance. Vivian got out the other side, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with fake horror. They rushed up to the ambulance. Mom. Oh my God, Mom. Jose yelled, trying to push past the paramedic to grab my hand. Are you all right? What happened? I looked right at him, right into his eyes. He was breathing hard, his face was pale, but it wasn't the pale of shock. It was the pale of fear. He wasn't scared for me. He was terrified of me. He was terrified that I was alive. Vivian started to wail. A high, thin sound. Oh, Miriam, your house, your beautiful home, everything. It's all gone. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the asset. She was crying because the house was burning, and I was still breathing. I just stared at them. I let my eyelids flutter, making myself look weak, like I was fading. Jose, I whispered, my voice frail. I'm so cold. I saw his shoulders relax, just a fraction, but I saw it. He thought I was just a scared, confused old woman. He thought I had no idea. He thought he had gotten away with it. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I clutched the blanket. The fire hadn't been an end. It was a new beginning. My father's words were in my head. Fire only destroys what's useless. The fire had burned away the useless parts of me. The useless hope that my son would ever be the boy I loved. The useless belief that Vivian was anything but a monster. My mind was racing, and a plan began to form. I was not going to be a victim. I was going to make sure they faced the consequences. They had no idea what I'd saved from the flames. They had no idea what was in that box. And they had no idea who they were dealing with. The ambulance ride was a blur. The world was just sirens and the smell of sterile bandages. They brought me to St. David's, my old stomping grounds. It's funny, after 35 years of walking those halls as a nurse, it felt strange to be the one on the gurney. In the emergency room, they cut my singed nightgown and robe off me. A young nurse, bless her heart, tried to take the blanket I was clutching. "Please," I whispered, and my voice cracked. "It's personal." She must have thought I was in shock. She just nodded, her eyes full of pity, and let me keep it. They were all so busy assessing the burns on my back and hip, putting an oxygen mask on my face. They thought I was just another confused old lady who'd had a terrible accident. They left me alone for 1 minute, just one, to get a different dressing. I moved faster than I thought I could. I pulled the small, fireproof metal box from the folds of the blanket. It was still warm, and the edges were blistered black, but it was intact. I looked around wildly. There was nowhere. I shoved it under the thin mattress of the gurney right beneath my head. When they moved me to a room upstairs for observation, I palmed it. I felt like a thief. As soon as the orderly left, I pulled the box out and slipped it under my hospital gown, pressing it flat against my stomach. The metal was hard and cold against my skin, but I pulled the thin hospital blanket up to my chest. It was safe. It was my secret. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, the door to my room was creaking open. My heart hammered against the metal box. It was Jose. He was holding a bouquet of cheap-looking carnations. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes were rumpled, but he didn't look sad. He looked wired. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, a man vibrating with nervous energy. "Mom," he said, his voice a perfect, gentle whisper. "Mom, are you awake?" I kept my eyes closed for a second longer, then let them flutter open. I squinted at him, as if the light was too bright, as if I couldn't quite place him. "Jose!" A wave of pure, unmistakable relief washed over his face. It was the same relief I'd seen when he arrived at the fire. He thought I was confused, addled by the smoke and the shock. "Yeah, Mom, it's me." He walked over to the bedside table and put the flowers down, fumbling, knocking over my plastic cup of water. "Oh, shoot. Sorry." He grabbed a handful of tissues, dabbing at the spill. His hands were shaking. "Good. Where am I?" I asked, my voice a dry rasp. "You're at the hospital, Mom. St. David's. There was a fire at the house." He pulled the chair closer, sat down, and leaned in. You remember it?" He was testing me. I saw him searching my face, looking for any sign of accusation. I let my eyes go wide, trying to fill them with a convincing, empty terror. A fire? The house, my house. I tried to sit up, but I winced. The pain in my hip was real enough, and fell back onto the pillows. "Sure, Mom, it's okay. It's okay," he said, and he did the one thing I was dreading. He reached out and patted my hand. His touch felt like ice. "The house, it's gone, Mom. I'm so sorry. It's all gone. But you're safe. That's the only thing that matters." I don't remember. I lied, letting a tear slip from the corner of my eye. It's all fuzzy. I was in my chair. The old lamp. I think it was the lamp. It sparked. He squeezed my hand, a little too hard. "That's right, Mom. The fire chief said it was probably the old wiring. A terrible, tragic accident. He was feeding me my own lie back. He was desperate for me to believe it. Vivian," he went on, shaking his head, she's a wreck. She was too upset to even come. She's at home, just crying and crying. You know how much she loved that house. All your memories gone. I bet she was a wreck. A wreck that I was still alive. A wreck that her gold mine was a pile of ash. "I'm so tired, Jose," I whispered, and I let my eyes close. "I know, Mom. I know." He kept patting my hand. "You rest. Don't you worry about a thing. You hear me? We're going to take care of everything. The insurance, the police report, all the paperwork. You just focus on getting better. He thought he was in charge now. He thought he was the dutiful son, left to pick up the pieces for his poor, confused mother. He thought he had won. Okay, Jose, I whispered. Thank you. You're a good son. I felt him pause. I felt his hand still on mine. He stood up. I'll be back tomorrow, Mom, with Vivian. You rest. He walked out, pulling the door almost shut. The moment I heard his footsteps fade down the hall, I opened my eyes. They were sharp. They were clear. My hand went to my gown, to the hard, rectangular bulge beneath it. He was going to take care of everything. He and Vivian were already planning it. They'd take over my bank accounts, the insurance. They'd probably try to have me declared incompetent, a frail old woman who couldn't be trusted on her own. They thought the fire had destroyed everything that mattered. They thought it had wiped the slate clean. They didn't know I was lying on top of George's real will. They didn't know I had the bank statements showing every loan I'd ever given him. They didn't know I had the original deed to the house, free and clear. They didn't know about the other documents, the ones that would undo everything. They had no idea what I'd saved. Jose thought this was over. He didn't realize. I was just getting started. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. Smoke inhalation and second-degree burns on my back. My hip was badly bruised, but nothing was broken. Jose and Vivian were there every visiting hour. They brought magazines I didn't read and lukewarm coffee I didn't drink. They were the perfect picture of a worried, dutiful family. The doctor says you can't be alone, Mom, Jose said on the 3rd day, his face a mask of concern. The house is gone. The insurance. It's all a mess. You're coming to stay with us. Vivian chimed in, patting my arm. We've already got the guest room all set up for you. You'll be so comfortable. We can take care of you. I knew what it really was. It wasn't care. It was surveillance. They wanted me where they could watch me. They wanted to control the flow of information, manage my money, and make sure I didn't suddenly remember what really happened. Oh, thank you, dears, I whispered, playing my part. I don't know what I'd do without you. This was perfect. Their big mistake. They were bringing the witness and the evidence right into their own home. They packed my few belongings, the hospital gown, the scorched blanket, and the clothes they'd brought me. I had hidden the metal box in the small overnight bag they'd packed, wrapped in the blanket. They carried my bag for me, never knowing they were carrying their own destruction. Their house was cold, not in temperature, but in feeling, all gray and white and glass like a magazine, not a home. They put me in a guest room on the 1st floor. Just rest, Mom, Jose said, putting my bag at the foot of the bed. We'll handle everything. And so began the waiting game. I knew I couldn't move yet. They were too alert, too dangerous. I had to let them get comfortable. I had to let them think they had won. I spent my days quietly playing the role of the frail, traumatized survivor. I forgot what I was saying mid-sentence. I stared out the window for long, empty hours. I let Vivian fluff my pillows and bring me meals on a tray, as if I were too weak to walk to the kitchen. All the while, I was observing. I was listening. They thought I was asleep most of the time. The walls were thin. One night, about a week after I'd arrived, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. Their voices were low, sharp whispers. What do you mean? It's pending. Vivian hissed. The police report said accidental. Why hasn't the insurance paid out? I don't know, Viv. Jose's voice was tight with stress. They said it's a total loss investigation. It takes time. And the bank, her accounts are frozen until we can get a durable power of attorney. And what about that? She snapped. You said you'd get her to sign the papers. I found a lawyer who will backdate it if she just makes her mark. She's not all there right now, Vivian. You saw her today. She was talking about Dad, like he was in the next room. If I shove a legal document in her face, she might, I don't know, it might look suspicious. There was a slam, like a cabinet door. I'm tired of being patient. Jose, we have nothing. The house is a pile of ash. We're in debt up to our eyeballs from that stupid tech venture and she's just sitting in there, sitting on a fortune. We did what we had to do. Now where is the reward? Quiet. She'll hear you. She won't hear anything. She's half deaf and half gone. Get it done, Jose, or I will. I lay in the dark, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. I wasn't scared. I was calm. They were unraveling. Their greed was making them sloppy. I reached under my mattress. I had moved the box from the bag on the first night. I pulled it out, my fingers tracing the scorched metal in the dark. I thought of George. I remembered the day he gave it to me, clear as if it were yesterday. It was a rainy Saturday, and I was trying to balance the checkbook. He came into the study holding this very box. Miriam, he'd said, his voice serious. I want you to put this somewhere safe. What is it, honey? I'd asked, looking up. You look so grim. It's just safeguards, he said, setting it on the desk. It's our will, the real one, and the deed to the house, clear and free, and some other documents, things to protect you. Protect me from what? I'd laughed. He'd hesitated, looking out the window at the rain. I don't know. The world. People. You're a good, trusting woman, Miri. That's why I love you. But not everyone is good. He tapped the box. And I don't ever want anyone, family or otherwise, to be able to push you around. Or take what's yours. Promise me you'll hide this. Don't even tell Jose. Not until he's got a family of his own and a head on his shoulders. He's a good boy, but he's soft. He's easily led. My husband, dead 20 years, had seen it. He had seen the softness that Vivian had turned into a weapon. He had known, even then. I held the box to my chest. Jose was dangerous, yes, but he was weak. Vivian was ruthless, but she was impatient. They saw the cracks in my facade, but I saw the cracks in theirs. They were getting desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I just had to wait for the right moment to show them what a safeguard looked like. I let them stew for 2 more days. The tension in that cold, gray house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I could hear them whispering in the kitchen, their voices sharp and angry. They were unraveling. They were desperate, and they were getting sloppy. On Saturday morning, they came into my room. They didn't knock. Vivian came in first, holding a clipboard and a pen. Her smile was stretched so tight across her face. It looked painful. Good morning, Miriam. How are you feeling today? A little tired, dear, I said, slowly sitting up against my pillows. I watched her. Jose followed her in, but he didn't come close to the bed. He just stood by the door, like a nervous guard, wringing his hands and staring at a spot on the carpet. Well, Vivian said, her voice dripping with fake cheer, we have some wonderful news that should perk you right up. Jose has been on the phone nonstop, working so hard with the insurance company for you. Oh, I said, keeping my voice flat. Yes, but to finalize everything and to get you the money you're owed, they just need some pesky paperwork signed. It's just a formality. She stepped forward and placed the clipboard on my lap on top of my thin blanket. It's a durable power of attorney. It just lets us handle all the red tape for you. You don't need to be stressed by any of this. She clicked the pen and held it out to me. If you could just sign right here on the bottom line, we can have this all settled by Monday. I looked at the pen she was holding. I looked at the paper, full of legal words I knew were a trap. Then I looked up, past her, to my son, who was still staring at the floor. Jose, I said. He flinched. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and haunted. Look at me, Jose. He swallowed, but he met my gaze. I let the silence hang in the room. Vivian's plastic smile started to twitch. Miriam, is there a problem? Do you need a different pen? I won't be signing that, I said. My voice didn't shake. It wasn't the voice of a frail, confused old woman. It was the voice of Miriam Davis, the charge nurse. The voice that doctors and patients had listened to for 35 years. Vivian's face hardened. The fake sweetness evaporated in an instant. Now, Miriam, don't be difficult. We are just trying to help you. Help me, I said, my voice rising just a little. Help me like you. Help me on Tuesday night. Help me like you did when you poured gasoline outside my bedroom door. Vivian took a step back, her eyes wide. Jose. Jose flinched, hard, like he'd been slapped. Mom, what are you talking about? You're confused. You remember, you told us it was the lamp. I was never confused, Jose, I said, my voice sharp and cold. Not for 1 second. I leaned over, grunting with the effort. My hip screamed, but I ignored it. I reached under the mattress. Vivian and Jose just stared, frozen. I pulled out the scorched, black, metal box. I placed it on my lap with a heavy, solid thud right on top of their power of attorney papers. Vivian just stared at it. What is that? Some box of old letters? What are you doing? I was thinking, Jose, I said, my eyes locked on my son. You came back to the fire, didn't you? You and Vivian. You put on such a good show. The grieving son, the horrified daughter-in-law. We were horrified. Vivian stammered. You were, I agreed. You were horrified that I was lying on the grass and not in the ashes. But here's the thing, Jose. You never opened the door to my room, did you? You just stood outside and watched it burn. You left me in there. You locked that door. I paused, letting the truth of it fill the room, letting him feel the weight of it. But what if you had opened that door, Jose? What if after you and your wife left me for dead, you'd gotten a sudden pang of conscience? What if you'd unlocked that door and opened it and found me sitting on the bed, waiting for you, holding this? And just like the title of my story, Jose's face went pale. It wasn't just white. It was a sick, chalky, gray color. All the blood drained right out of him. He grabbed the doorframe to hold himself up. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He just stared. He was stunned. He was looking at a ghost. My ghost. What is in that box? Vivian whispered. Her composure was gone. Her voice was shaking. What is it? Safeguards, I said, and my hand rested on the lid. My husband, George, he was a smart man. He knew his son. He knew you were soft, easily led. I looked right at Vivian, and he knew a shark when he saw one. I unlatched the box. The click echoed in the silent room. You're right, Jose, I said. The house is gone. But you seem to think that matters. You see, this, I pulled out the first document, is your father's real will. The one he and I signed with a lawyer, not the draft you found in his desk. This one, it leaves the house and all assets in an ironclad trust, managed by me, and upon my death. Well, let's just say after your performance, you don't get a dime. It all goes to the nursing scholarship I set up in your father's name. Jose just slid down the doorframe, sinking to the floor in a heap. And this, I pulled out a stack of papers, is every bank statement from the last 3 years. Every loan you two pressured me for. Every investment. It's all here. Vivian's eyes were darting between the box and the door. She was a cornered rat. That's not, you can't prove anything, she hissed. It's just paper. It was an accident. The lamp. I know, I said calmly. which is why I'm so glad I saved this, too. I pulled out the last thing from the box. It wasn't a paper. It was a small, black microcassette. What's that? Jose whispered from the floor. I've been feeling so confused ever since Vivian came into our lives. So, a few months ago, I started carrying a small, voice-activated recorder in my pocket, just to help my bad memory. I happened to be wearing it that night. It recorded everything, you two. Everything. I stared right at Vivian. It recorded you telling Jose to lock the door. It recorded Jose telling me I'd burn for this. It recorded the click of the lock, and it recorded both of you running out the front door. Vivian's face just crumpled. The beautiful, polished mask was gone. Underneath was just an ugly, terrified, greedy woman. She lunged at me, grabbing for the box. Give me that, you old. I snapped the lid shut and shoved the box behind me. I wasn't scared. I'd faced down death. She was nothing. I pushed her clipboard off my lap. It clattered to the floor, scattering the useless papers. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. My hips screamed in protest, but I didn't care. I stood up. Holding my box, and I looked down at my son, cowering on the floor, and his monstrous wife. Now, I said, my voice clear and strong. I believe I'll be making a phone call. I stood there for a second, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and pain. Vivian was on the floor, weeping, trying to grab at the scattered power of attorney papers as if they mattered anymore. Jose, my son, was just sitting against the doorframe, his head in his hands, making this awful, high-pitched keening sound. I looked down at them, at the mess they had made of our lives, of my home, of my heart, and I felt nothing, not pity, not rage, just an ending. I turned, and I walked out of that room. My hip was on fire. Every step was a new, bright jolt of pain. I clutched the metal box to my chest like a shield. I walked down their cold, gray hallway, past their glass tables and their soulless art. Where are you going? Vivian shrieked from behind me. You can't leave. Miriam. I didn't answer. I didn't look back. I walked to their front door. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. I got it open and stepped out into the bright morning sun. It felt so good, so real. I took a deep breath of fresh air and walked down their perfect concrete path. I just kept walking one painful step at a time across their manicured lawn and onto the sidewalk. I didn't know where I was going, just away. A car slowed down. It was a woman walking her dog. Ma'am, are you all right? I must have looked a sight. A 68-year-old woman in a hospital-issue nightgown, barefoot, clutching a scorched metal box. Please, I said, and my voice sounded surprisingly strong. Call 911. My son and his wife, they've been holding me captive. The legal part, that's a different kind of fire. It's slow. It's cold. It burns everything away just the same. The police came to the neighbor's house. I sat at their kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket, and I told them everything. I didn't cry. I just spoke. I told them about the fire, the gasoline, the locked door. I told them about the lie I told the fire department and why I told it. Then I opened the box. I gave them the will. I gave them the bank statements. And I gave them the little microcassette recorder. A detective, a kind woman with tired eyes, sat with me. She put an earpiece in and pressed play. I watched her face. Her expression went from patient to confused to horrified. Her eyes met mine, and she just nodded once. They arrested Jose and Vivian that same morning. I didn't watch. I was already in an ambulance on my way back to the hospital. The trial was 3 months later. I spent those 3 months in a small, furnished apartment paid for by an emergency fund George had set up, a fund I'd forgotten even existed until I opened that box. When the day came to testify, I was terrified, not of them, but of faltering, of breaking down, of letting that old, foolish mother's heart betray me one last time. But it didn't. I walked into that courtroom using a cane. My hip would never be the same. But as I walked past the bench where Jose sat, I didn't look at him. I stood tall. I took the oath, and I told the truth. The recording was the thing. They played it in the silent courtroom. My scream. Vivian's voice. Lock it. Lock the door. Jose's voice. You'll burn for this, you old fool. I heard a gasp from the jury. Vivian, she tried to save herself. Her lawyer argued that she was coerced, that she was terrified of Jose, that he was the monster, not her. She turned on him, painting him as a violent, unhinged man. Jose just sat there. He was a shell. He was thin, pale. The man who had looked at me with such hate was gone. In his place was just a weak, broken boy, just like his father had said. He never looked at me. Not once. After the jury gave their verdict, guilty for both of them on all counts, attempted murder, arson, conspiracy, fraud, I was given the chance to speak, to give a statement. I stood up, holding onto the podium to keep my hands from shaking. I didn't look at Vivian. She was nothing to me. I looked at Jose. I made myself look at my son. I don't hate you, Jose, I said, and my voice was quiet, but the microphones picked it up. I think you have to love someone to be able to hate them. And the person I loved, the son I loved, he's not here. He died a long time ago, long before the fire. You didn't just try to burn me alive. You burned down our life. You burned down every good memory, every birthday party, every graduation. You burned down the little boy who brought me wildflowers. And for what? For money? For a house? For her? I don't feel vengeful. I just feel sad. You had everything. You had a mother who loved you, who would have given you anything but her own life, her own dignity. And that was the one thing you demanded. I forgive that little boy. I will love that little boy until the day I die. But you, the man sitting there, you are a stranger to me. And I want to be free of you. I just want peace. I sat down. I've lost a lot. I lost my son. I lost my home, the place where I had raised my family. I lost the naive trust one used to have. But as I walked out of that courtroom, I realized I gained something, too. I gained me. The fire hadn't destroyed me. It had burned away the last of my useless hope, the hope that had kept me a victim. It had forged me into something stronger. I was free. The weight of his betrayal, of her greed, it was gone. It was their burden to carry now in a small cold cell, not mine. I was finally, truly free. It's been a year. I live in a new apartment now. It's on the 3rd floor of a nice, quiet building with an elevator. It's smaller than my house, but I love it. Every single thing in it is new. A new sofa, a new bed, a new tea kettle. I chose every piece. There are no ghosts here. There are no bad memories etched into the door frames. It's just mine. The insurance money finally came through once the court case was settled. The trust George set up did its job. It protected me even after he was gone. The nursing scholarship in his name is fully funded now. That brings me a quiet kind of joy. I still walk with a cane. My hip will always be a reminder. It aches when the rain comes, a dull throb that tells me a storm is on the way. But I walk. Every day, I make myself go out and walk. Today, I did something different. I took the bus back to my old neighborhood. I hadn't been back since the fire. I got off at the familiar corner, my hand a little tight on the handle of my cane. I walked down the sidewalk. I pushed Jose's stroller down 1,000 times. I saw Mr. Henderson in his yard, weeding his hydrangeas. He saw me, and he stood up, wiping his hands on his pants. He didn't look at me with pity. He didn't rush over to treat me like I was made of glass. He just smiled. A real, warm smile. "Miriam," he called out, "it's good to see you." "It's good to see you too, Mr. Henderson." I called back. "The hydrangeas look beautiful." "They're a lot of work, but worth it," he said, and went back to his weeding. It was normal. That one simple, normal conversation felt like a victory. I was no longer the neighborhood tragedy. I was just Miriam. I kept walking until I got to my lot. There's nothing there. Just an empty patch of grass where my house used to be. The city had cleared the debris months ago. Someone had put a for sale sign up, but it was tilted and old. No one wanted to build on a place with such a story, I suppose. I stood there on the sidewalk, looking at the empty space. I thought I would feel sad or angry. I thought I'd cry for my kitchen or my armchair or the photos I'd lost. But I didn't. I just looked at the patch of green grass, and I felt quiet. That fire took my house. It took my past. It took the son I thought I had. But it didn't take me. I am no longer afraid. I don't fear what people think. I don't fear being alone. I certainly don't fear my son's wrath. He has no power over me. He and Vivian will be in prison for a very, very long time. I have found that life is a lot like an old house. You live in it. You get comfortable. You think you know every creak and shadow. You think it's strong. You think it will protect you. And then someone you trust strikes a match. And in an instant, everything you thought was real is just smoke. You're left standing on the grass in your nightgown with nothing but the foundation. And you have a choice. You can lie down in the ashes and let them cover you, or you can stand up, brush yourself off, and start walking. I'm 69 years old. I walk with a cane. I have burns on my back, but I am stronger now than I ever was when I was young and whole. I've learned that the most important lesson in life, no matter what you face, no matter what betrayal or loss or fire comes for you, never forget that you are stronger than it. It might scorch you. It might scar you. It might burn away every single thing you thought you loved. But it can never, ever destroy who you are. Unless you let it. That's my story. And I wanted to share it with all of you. If what I went through touched you, please take a moment to click the like button. It lets me know that my story mattered to someone. And if you know anyone who is feeling trapped or scared or thinks they've lost everything, please share this video with them. Maybe they need to hear that they are stronger than the fire, too. And now, I'd love to hear from you. That's the part one look forward to. If you were in my shoes, how would you have handled the betrayal? What would you do if someone you loved, someone you trusted with all your heart, tried to burn you alive? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I will be reading them. I'd love to hear your stories. And of course, if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Lastly, remember to download this wonderful book called Coming Back to Myself, 60 Liberating Truths to Find Yourself Again. You'll find it in the pinned comment below. Now, if you like this story, go ahead and click on the next video appearing on your screen, because in it is a story of betrayal and revolt like you've never seen before on her Kindle Stories. Thank you.